1721. Message 12:10:20 p.m. Friday, July 21.
Hello, my name is Maureen DePue, D-E capital P-U-Y, address 2012-20112 Charles Street, Belmore, B-E-L-L-M-O-R-E, New York, 11710. I love your show, and I would love to read more about you and your happy book. Bye.
Message 13:10:29 p.m. Friday, July 21. Message 14:10:30 p.m. Friday, July 21. Message 15:11:52 p.m. Friday, July 21.
Hey, Glendora, it's Marianne Pascal, returning your call. I'm on the road. I'm in California. I'm so happy to hear you on your Cablevision case. You should give Joe Spella a call. He's been doing the story, and I'm not going to be back until Tuesday. He's at area code 303-393-7449. Love your joke of the day. Take care, sweetie. Bye.
Message 16:10:34 a.m. Saturday, July 22. Message 17:10:34 a.m. Saturday, July 22. End of messages.
Uh, 8:56 a.m. This is Vito breaking the law again. This is July 25th, 1995, Tuesday. White Plains Noise Ordinance, or White Plains Ordinance. Whatever happened to the good old-fashioned rake? 8:58 a.m. July 25th, 1995. My cats will be glad they're going. I will be glad they're going.
you have, if someone's using a gas-powered leaf blower, you let us know. We'll send an officer out to investigate.
Okay, will the officer give him a summons?
It depends on if the person's been issued a warning first.
Oh, he's issued a warning first?
Generally, they're issued a warning first.
Okay, this is the second time the gardener's done this.
Okay, well, if we have it on record that he's been issued a warning, then it's possible that he could be issued a summons.
Okay. All righty.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Look at that pretty kitty. Why are you yawning, kitty?
This petrifies poor Katie. They're gone now, Katie, for another week. They're gone, Katie. Yeah, now you can go back to sleep. See what they did to my bird food. Oh, they messed that up. That's my food I put out for the birds and the squirrels. That's amazing how Vito of Silver Lake violates the law openly and thinks he's going to get away with it. Be brave, folks. Fight evil. The young man was making out the application for employment, and the question was, in case of accident, whom do you notify? And the young man wrote down, a good doctor. And do you know how Sidney made his waterbed more comfortable? He put water softener in it. And in a beauty shop, folks, the gossip alone is enough to curl your hair. This is a new week of Chat with Glendora, the week from July the 22nd to July the 27th, 1995. I say that a Chat with Glendora is a public forum. You heard the 17 telephone calls that came in Friday night when a Chat with Glendora was on in Nassau County on Cablevision. So I really take exception to the ruling that public access is not a public forum. The story on Scott Lord is over. Scott Lord is a home improvement contractor in Nassau and Suffolk County. He's now currently operating under the name Forever Green. Every year he changes his company name, he changes his lawyers, and he changes his bank. And so far as I know, Scott Lord is still being allowed to operate without a consumer affairs license. Thomas Galata, the supervisor of the County of Nassau, has not told me differently, and I've made maybe 25 complaints. And James Picken, who is the Commissioner on Consumer Affairs, has not told me differently. Scott Lord ordered 10 ads from Glendora TV Ads for WCBS TV Channel 2. I got the ads all together, ready to go on the air, when Scott Lord's checks bounced. And he refused upon several demands to make them good. And so we sued him here in the Westchester County Supreme Court. The case was sent to Virginia, Naplin, and Scarsdale. And Scott Lord, as usual, didn't show up. His lawyer then was Brendan Toomey. And so I got a judgment for $2,800. And as usual, the sheriff in Nassau County did nothing as to what sheriffs are supposed to do, go out and collect it. And so I got the home improvement license of Scott Lord taken away. And Scott Lord said several times that he would pay me the money that he owed me by now. It was up to $4,500 with all the interest. And but he always reneged. And it was all set. And it was set up through Consumer Affairs and through the Nassau County Attorney. And Scott Lord went, as always, back on his word. And then he went bankrupt. And I fought the bankruptcy. I showed the fraud on his bankruptcy petition. And I fought it for 4.5 years. And the trustee of the bankruptcy court, the panel trustee, Richard Connell, finally woke up, and so did Judge Robert John Hall finally wake up, and found out very clearly that Scott Lord had committed fraudulent conveyance. conveyances with Jan Stahl and Jeffrey Burns. What are fraudulent conveyances? Well, on the eve of the bankruptcy, if you take the money that you have so you can go bankruptcy, and the eve means within the year previous to filing, and you get rid of that money, well, then you've committed fraudulent conveyances. You've conveyed it fraudulently. And so Jeffrey Burns and Jan Stahl had to pay $5,000 into the bankruptcy estate, and Scott Lord had to pay $14,500, so he got nowhere by going bankrupt. That is one good thing that happened in the bankruptcy court. I think the bankruptcy law is a monster. I think its administration is abysmal. I think it should be rescinded. The bankruptcy law. It's not fair to the creditors. It's not fair to them at all. A person can decide to go bankrupt, pay $1,000 to a bankruptcy lawyer, and there's thousands of those, easy money, and fill out the bankruptcy filing form, and then say he doesn't have any money. Then he goes before a trustee. Nothing has to be proved. Just ask questions. Do you have any money in the bank? Do you own any bonds? And so forth. And then sits with the trustee there in the what they call the 341 hearings for 10 minutes, and then walks out, and everybody is ripped off. 100 creditors are ripped off, and the person in bankruptcy doesn't have to pay for anything. But this is one bankruptcy that backfired, and he ended up paying a whole lot more. Because of Scott Lord and my reporting to the consumers in Nassau County, to you people, watch out for him and watch out for similar frauds, and take a look at all these judgments in the county clerk's office in Nassau County. Take a look at the district attorney's file. Take a look at, and the district attorney, what was his name? Stephen Irace, he didn't do his job. He didn't enforce the law, and he abused us. Anyway, take a look at the record in the district attorney's office, take a look at the record in the county clerk's office, take a look at the record in the sheriff's office, and you'll see almost 100 judgments against Scott Lord, unpaid. But mine is paid. So, reporting all this on TV and trying to protect consumers, and also telling the people in Nassau County that the county agencies and their federal agencies and their state agencies were not doing the job to protect them. This, upon information and belief, caused these politicos to exert pressure upon Cablevision Systems Corporation and to take Glendora's program off the TV in Nassau County and those three towns in Suffolk, which are huge: Huntington, Islip, and Babylon. Cablevision, in its ignorance and its arrogance, violated both a state law and a federal law. Glendora sued them in 3 courts. The first time in the United States District Court, Judge Bryant. Judge Bryant's decision was that they were private people and not state actors. And Glendora appealed that in the United States Court of Appeals, Second Circuit, and won. The Second Circuit told Judge Bryant they vacated his decision and told him, and remanded it. So that meant do it over. Excuse me. And the second suit was in the Westchester County Supreme Court. Judge Silverman ruled that Glendora did have a statutory right to have a program on TV, and it must be returned. It was off for 9 months. And that was also a violation of your freedom of speech, because you had a right to hear these warnings about Scott Lord and people like him, and about the inefficacy of the county, state, and federal agencies. You had that right. Nobody had a right to take it away from you. Your civil rights were violated. So the program was put back on the TV in Nassau County, Suffolk, on September the 2nd, 1994. And they broke the second federal law that they broke is similar to the state law. No cable operator shall exercise editorial control over public use of channel. That's Law 531E, Title 47. That's the Cable Act, the 1984 Cable Act, which was revised in 1990. When was it? 3? 2? 2. So this is what's all behind this. Really, these Cablevision lawsuits are a spin-off of the law-breaking of Scott Lord, the lying, the thievery, and the cheating. So that brings us up to Cablevision. And before we tell you what happened on Cablevision this week of July 22nd to July 27th, let us tell you some more jokes. What a rare book is, a rare book is a book that you loan a friend and he returns it. And John says the boss runs his business just like one big happy family, and the secretary says that's right, he hires all of his relatives. And Marilyn says, I feel like telling the boss off again. And the other secretary said, again? Marilyn says, yeah. Also, I felt like it yesterday. And Peter said to his boss, he says, can I have the 22nd of next month off? He said, it's my wife and I. It's our silver anniversary. And the boss says, what? You mean I got to put up with this every 25 years? And now the news on Cablevision. First of all, the log. It's on vacation this week. This must be nice to take a vacation. I haven't taken a vacation ever with the law breaking and the crooked judges and the corrupt court. Must be nice to go on vacation. The file is fine to here. This log on the went out on Monday as it should. This log right here. No, not this log. That was the week before. Was still at TCI on Thursday. I like that. I like that a lot. And Linda is doing very, very well. And I think that you people at TCI ought to realize how much there is there at the public access studio in White Plains that belongs to TCI. How much there is for her to learn. You know, how to do all these live productions, so-called, the ones that go on tape. And then how to do mine. I don't videotape my program there. I videotape it here in my living room. But a lot of people videotape their programs in the TCI studio, and there's a lot to learn. And I think TCI, I wish you would please give Linda the appreciation as to how much there is for her to learn. And she's only had like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 days of training. But anyway, we made out just great, except that they don't know that program number 1821 doesn't have any videoed. So that will all have to be done over on the 8mm archive. The 3/4 inch has video and audio, and the VHS has video and audio, but the archive will have to be done over, and that's on 8mm. I have a fan here, cutest little fan, nice buddy. This little fan is the nicest buddy. You feel? Does that make you cooler? I brought that down to Bradley's, and it was only about like $9, and it's been worth $300 in this humid weather. 83 degrees inside, 83 degrees outside, 93% humidity. And then most of the week it's been up over the 90s, the last week in July. I checked all the work that I did at White Plains Public Access because the editing wasn't that good at White Plains Public Access this week. There was no VHS capacity there. It was carelessly taken out of the studio, and I didn't even get started until 45 minutes late, and that's the whole program. On Thursday, big news, folks, for all of us. The Bryant decision came, the decision that the whole country's been waiting for from Judge Bryant, and that is going to be read to you. How do you think it came out? What's your guess as to how it came out? It'll either be reported to you on this program or on the next program. We are now doing the log of the Glendora TV log. Texaco is selling at 65 5/8. Cablevision is selling at 66 5/8. Well, I bought it, I think, at 42. Gannett is selling at 53 7/8, and CBS is selling at 75 1/2. I think that's due to the rumor that, who's going to buy CBS? Who was it that's going to buy CBS? Westinghouse. Well, they have become, Westinghouse and CBS have become partners quite closely here. I eat farina quite often. I alternate between farina and oatmeal and wheatina. And every time I eat farina, I think of Richard Farina, who's a law clerk for Judge Ingracia. To see the Hebrew people, they go to temple. I like to see that. And they're all dressed up very, very nicely, and women wear pretty hats. And apparently they have something about walking. Either that or they can't find a parking space, but they come walking north on Greenridge Avenue, the families, and go to temple. We diagonally across the street is the what's it called? Jewish Center? Anyway, I like seeing them go. That's nice. It's terrific. It makes a lot of noise. Not just popping the corn, but the hot air machine itself. That's what a chat with Glendora is, a hot air machine, right? And the popcorn comes out and it's so fluffy. Oh, it's nice, and no grease, no oil. I just love it. And my poor Great American popcorn machine, I retired because it took grease and it got all layered with grease, with vegetable oil. So it's retired, but he was a good friend. Third or fourth night, I get a chance to sleep 9 to 5. I go to bed at 9 p.m., get up to 5. So I sleep 9 to 5, and I put down here like a Cablevision board member. And then lots of nights I'm up, and the little boy says, "Daddy, does the husband boss the house?" And Daddy says, "No, son, the husband houses the boss." We watch Robert Schuller every morning, folks. We go up and do the bird bath, and in that beautiful yard up there, the green grass, it's so pretty, and the trees. And so we take the bird bath and we soak it in Clorox and water and get it all nice and clean and scrub it out. And then we fill the bird bath with water, and then we also have to scrub the picnic tables where our friends for whom we go and do the bird bath every 2 days drop their calling cards on the picnic table. You can't win. I have the most beautiful music to play you. Bach's Sleepers Awake. You're going to hear that on the program from time to time. I have a lot of new hymns for you. A whole side by Bach and the Mormon Tabernacle Choir with the orchestra by Eugene Ormandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra. Boy, they are good. The time on Cablevision the week of July the 17th, 16 hours. The money was $2.20. Okay, that's the log. Now we're going to start the Bryant decision very soon and read it to you. We'll save that for the next program, so stay tuned for that next week. These programs should come out so that they are on Nassau County and Suffolk because they are related to you folks. And we try to keep the Westchester information on the Westchester cable TV channels, and we try to keep the Nassau County on the Nassau County channels. But I'm telling you, that's one hard job because they don't break right. Because the week that Nassau needs new programs, they'll be about Westchester, and the week that Westchester needs new programs, they'll be about Nassau. It really drives you bananas, this distribution. We're going to close with jokes. So, Edgar says, the boss and I have a wonderful relationship, pure and simple. I'm pure and he's simple. And the secretary says, I never have to worry about the boss losing his temper. Never. He can always find it when he needs it. And if you're going to have an argument with the boss, it's best for you to look at both sides, the inside and the outside. And this is a chat with Glendora. Fight evil, be brave, keep your courage flaming. Take care. Everybody, welcome to a chat with Glendora. How are you today? How are you doing with the fight for justice? Jokes to start off with, and then we're going to report to you what happened on Cablevision on the week of July 22nd to July 27th, 1995. The boss is not doing as well as you think he is. He's not as well off as you might think, because the telephone in his Lincoln is a party line. And the boss said to the secretary, your work is improving. And the secretary was very pleased, and the boss says, that's right, it doesn't take as long to redo it. And John says that important is being invited to the Oval Office. Peter says, no, important is that you're in the Oval Office. And the telephone rings, and the president puts the caller on hold. And Dennis says, no, he says, important is you're in the Oval Office, you're talking to the president, the telephone rings, and the president answers, and he says, here, it's for you. We're going to tell you where the Glendora TV log is on Cablevision and bring you up to date on that. In front of the Westchester County Courthouse on Monday morning, and I stand at the entrance to the courthouse that the judges get their special parking spaces with their special license plates. And Donovan went by, and I was within earshot of Donovan, and I was chanting crooked lawyers and corrupt judges. I saw Fredman, I saw Silverman. They have to go right by me, and I parade with my poster. Against Cablevision Systems Corporation, Charles F. Dolan, William J. Bell, Mark A. Lusgarten, Francis F. Randolph Jr., John Tata, James A. Kofal, Joseph Aznara, Thomas Garger, and William Quin. 93 Civ 8344, CLB, standing for what? Charles L. Bryant. Memorandum in order, J. Bryant. Plaintiff Glendora, an individual who produces video programs, brings this pro se action under the Cable Communications Policy Act of 1984 as amended and supplemented by the Cable Television Consumer Protection and Competition Act of 1992, codified principally in Title 47 of the United States Code, Sections 521 et sec. The Cable Act, we shall call it, as well as the First and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. Supplemental state law claims are also asserted. This case is now before the court on remand pursuant to directions of our Court of Appeals. Judge Bryant refers not to the United States Court of Appeals Second Circuit, which is its full name, but he calls that our Court of Appeals. See Glendora versus Cablevision Systems Corporation, 45 Federal 3rd 36 Second Circuit, 1995. Familiarity with all prior proceedings and the underlying facts of plaintiff's claim is assumed, Judge Bryant says, and his footnote here is that it applies to the pro se above, that Media Access of New York, Manny, participates in this proceeding as amicus curiae in support of plaintiff's position. Manny is a coalition of individuals, including producers and subscribers of public access video programs dedicated to the promotion of public access to electronic media. And throughout the decision, Judge Bryant never did mention my amici curiae, who are Robert T. Perry and Brian D. Grafman, who did brilliant work. And Judge Bryant responded and leans on it heavily. Essentially, Glendora contends her rights were violated when defendants Cablevision System Corporation and its officials, collectively called Cablevision, quote-unquote, pressured by unidentified Nassau County officials, canceled her weekly series that dealt with her litigations. Glendora has engaged in numerous other pro se lawsuits in both state and federal court. C, e.g., Glendora versus Gannett Company Incorporated, 858 Federal Supplement, and I'm not going to read these to you, these citations, because they're long and complicated and you can read them anywhere or I can give them to you. Certificate of certiorari denied by the United States Supreme Court. I'm glad that he's doing this because I am proud of all of my fights for rights. And it's also, I want you to know, the record of the courts to deal with these things. Glendora versus Dolan, in the matter of Glendora versus the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal, Glendora versus Cohen, Glendora versus Dubestein, Glendora versus Amicone, Glendora versus CBS, Glendora versus Gallicano, Glendora versus Gannett Suburban Newspapers, Glendora versus Colfaw. She alleges that her litigation always raises questions of general interest worthy of media coverage. Well, we certainly know that. The New York Times, the New York Law Journal, the Newsday. Cablevision contends Glendora uses the cable outlet to further her personal vendettas against her adversaries. Well, that's about how stupid Cablevision can get. On February the 22nd, 1995, Cablevision moved to dismiss the amended complaint. By oral decision on March the 24th, 1995, as you remember, this court, meaning Judge Bryant, denied that portion of the motion to dismiss based on collateral estoppel and mootness. See the transcript. Here, the court addresses the merits of Glendora's federal claims. In resolving this motion, the court is required to respond to the mandate issued by the Court of Appeals, or by our Court of Appeals, on January the 11th, 1995, which states that the question, quote, left unanswered, unquote, by this court in previous proceedings is whether Section 531E of the Cable Act is applicable herein, and if it is, by whom should its provisions be enforced? By me or the Federal Communications Commission? Specifically, does a violation of Section 531E give rise to a private federal cause of action? Glendora, 45 F. 3rd at 38, by remanding the matter of this court for further proceedings rather than simply affirming dismissal of the decision, that is, of Judge Bryant's February 1994 decision, our Court of Appeals suggests that such an implied right exists. He's talking about my right of action to enforce this law. That Cablevision, that the FCC doesn't enforce it, I can enforce it. Now he has a footnote here. And it's really, I don't understand it. There's no point in reading it. Our Court of Appeals may affirm a judgment for reasons not considered by the district court. And he gives the cite here, Richards versus Salsky. Okay. Now we are on page 4 of Judge Bryant's decision, which was made on July the 19th, 1995, Thursday. Section 531 of the Cable Act provides that, subject to Action 544D of this title, a cable operator shall not exercise any editorial control over any public, educational, or governmental use of channel capacity provided pursuant to this section. That's Title 47 of the United States Code, Section 531E, the one you know by heart now. Section 544D permits operator intervention only if such cable services are obscene or are otherwise unprotected by the Constitution of the United States. And you know that these programs are not obscene. Cablevision alleges the Cable Act is inapplicable herein because Glendora is not entitled to access on its channels in Nassau County, New York, the Long Island system, we'll call it. The franchise agreements to which Cablevision operates the Long Island system limit the public access channels to the public within, quote unquote, the respective municipalities. See Exhibit C to L attached to Strickland reply affidavit. Now, let me just do the footnotes here. The term cable operator is defined as any person or group of persons, A, provides cable service over a cable system and directly or through one or more affiliates owns a significant interest in such cable system, who otherwise controls or is responsible for through any arrangement, management, and operation of such cable system. Under the Cable Act, a franchise authority may require a franchisee to provide channels for public, educational, or governmental paid use. A franchise authority would be like White Plains and like New Rochelle and like Greenberg. A franchise authority may require a franchisee to provide channels for public, educational, or governmental use. That's called PEG, Public, Educational, Governmental. 47 United States Code 531B, the New York State Commission on Cable Television has promulgated rules and regulations governing the franchising of cable operators in New York State, including a requirement that cable television franchisees designate channel capacity for PEG use. Cablevision provides PEG access pursuant to the terms of its franchise agreements with individual municipalities in Nassau and Suffolk counties, but allegedly offered public access channel capacity even prior to such requirement under the law. We're reading Judge Bryant's decision. Cablevision alleges the Cable Act is inapplicable here because Glendora is not entitled to access on its channels in Nassau County and Western Suffolk County, New York, the Long Island system. The franchise agreements pursuant to which Cablevision operates the Long Island system limit the public access channels to the public within the respective municipalities. Glendora, a Westchester County resident, and a resident only 4 blocks from the new federal courthouse, not reside in any county served by Cablevision's Long Island system. Glendora does not reside in the Long Island system. However, Glendora alleges she has a sponsor, Virginia Mondesando, who resides in Central Islip within the Long Island system. See the letter to Virginia Mondesando dated September 16, 1993, and access user contract attached to pro se plaintiff's brief. It is undisputed that beginning in September 1993, Glendora's video program was broadcasted by Cablevision on its public access channel serving Nassau County. Cablevision thereby admitted her right to be heard on public access. Let me repeat that. Judge Bryant says Cablevision thereby admitted her right to be heard on public access. This court concludes that Glendora's residency does not bar her use of Cablevision's public access channels or application of Section 531E of the Cable Act to this case, specifically in light of the sponsoring request of Ms. Mondesando. To determine whether an implied right of action exists under Section 531E, this court's focal point is Congress's intent in enacting the statute. We're going to deal with, does Glendora have a private right to enforce? Well, obvious to anybody who isn't paid to lie, yes. But this was Cablevision Kalaji's a very weak and faulty defense. She didn't have any defense anyhow. To determine whether an implied right of action exists under Section 531E, this court's focal point is Congress's intent in enacting the statute. Thompson versus Thompson. Congressional intent may appear implicitly in the language or structure of the statute or in the circumstances of its enactment. In Court versus Ash, the United States Supreme Court identified factors as guides to discerning congressional intent. 1, whether the plaintiff is one of the class for whose special benefit the statute was enacted, that is, does the statute create a federal right in favor of the plaintiff? 2, whether there is any indication of legislative intent, explicit or implicit, either to create such a remedy or to deny one. 3, whether it is consistent with the underlying purposes of the legislative scheme to imply such a remedy for the plaintiff. And 4, whether the cause of action is one traditionally relegated to state law in an area basically the concern of the states, so that it would be inappropriate to infer a cause of action based solely on federal law. Now, Judge Bryant goes through all four of these. And as you remember this, this was Perry's argument, Robert Perry's argument. It was brilliant, and I read that to you. And then you read, then I read to you Kalaji's anemic opposition to that. So here goes Judge Bryant. Examining these court factors as applied in this case, the court concludes Glendora has an implied federal cause of action under Section 531E of the Cable Act, E. First, as a public user of cable channels, Glendora is among the class for whose special benefit the statute was enacted. Section 531E prohibits a cable operator from exercising any editorial control over any public, educational, or governmental use of channel capacity. By its very terms, the beneficiaries of Title 47 of the United States Code 531E are these public access producers and viewers of public, educational, and governmental programs. That's you. Glendora, therefore, falls within the class for whose benefit Section 531E was enacted. So that's the first court versus Ash standard. Here comes number two. The language and structure of the statute also support the conclusion that Congress intended an implied cause of action here. The Cable Act fails to provide any express remedy for cable operator violations of Section 531E. The enforcement provision of Section 531C applies only to franchising requirements. Again, the term franchising authority is like White Plains, any governmental entity empowered by federal, state, or local law to grant a franchise. A franchising authority may enforce any requirement in any franchise regarding the providing or use of such channel capacity. Such enforcement, he's quoting here the law, authority includes the authority to enforce any provisions of the franchise for services, facilities, or equipment proposed by the cable operator which relate to public, educational, or governmental use of channel capacity, whether or not required by the franchising authority pursuant to subsection B of this section. Judge Bryant says that Section 531E may be considered a franchise requirement when a specific franchise agreement explicitly incorporates federal law. However, when a franchising agreement fails to incorporate the provision, no expressly designated mechanism under federal law exists to enforce Section 531E. But interpreting Section 531C, which speaks in permissive terms and does not apply when an agreement fails to incorporate federal requirements, as the only method under federal law of enforcing Section 531E contradicts the mandatory terms of this provision, providing that a cable operator shall not exercise editorial control except with regard to obscenity matters. The fact that Congress explicitly conferred a private right of action in other provisions of the Cable Act is not determinative of whether an implied right exists here. That was Kalaji's argument, and it falls. Oh, here's a whole lot of Latin. Rejecting maxim of statutory construction, expressio unius est exclusio ulterius. No, I had Latin for 3 years. I need help with that one. This court shares the concern implicit in the decision of the Court of Appeals in this case. It is difficult to believe that Congress provided a panoply of enforcement mechanisms for least access producers without intending to provide any direct method of enforcing public, educational, or governmental access to cable channels. It's common sense, and only if you're paid to lie could you make it sound otherwise. In a provision similar to Section 531E, the Cable Act provides, in relation to least access programming, that a cable operator shall not exercise any editorial control over any video programming provided pursuant to this action, or in any other way consider the content of such programming in determining whether to make channel capacity available. Do you hear that, Charles Dolan, John Tata, Francis Randolph, Mark Lustgarten, William Quin, William Bell. Congress recognized and expressed private cause of action to enforce this provision. Any person aggrieved by the failure or refusal of a cable operator to make channel capacity available for use pursuant to this section may bring an action in the District Court of the United States. Now he's talking there about leased access, not public access, to compel that such capacity be made. Congress also provided that an aggrieved person may seek relief from the Federal Communications Commission. Any person aggrieved by the failure or refusal of a cable operator to make channel capacity available pursuant to this section, that's the leased access, may petition the Commission for relief under this subsection upon a showing of prior adjudicated violations of this section. The similarity between sections 531E and 532C2, which was just quoted, supports the conclusion that Congress intended at least a private federal cause of action to exist for public access users. As required by the third court factor, court in this case is C-O-R-T, the court, C-O-U-R-T, meaning Bryant, concludes it is consistent with the underlying purposes of the legislative scheme for an implied right of action to exist under Section 531E. One of the stated purposes of the Cable Act is to assure that cable communications provide and are encouraged to provide the widest possible diversity of information sources and services to the public. Recognizing a private right of action for public access users under Section 531E furthers this goal. Often public, governmental, and educational entities offer unique or minority viewpoints which may remain unrepresented in leased access programming. Yeah, can you imagine on broadcast talking about Scott Lord and warning you as a consumer to watch out for it? A user's right to seek redress in federal court for unlawful editorial control encourages cable operators to provide diverse information sources and services to the public, as was contemplated when these systems were authorized. Finally, the claim here is not one traditionally relegated to state law in an area basically the concern of the states. This is the fourth standard for Court versus Ash. The purpose of the Cable Act is to establish a national policy concerning cable communications. Congress has deemed it a national policy to ensure that cable operators refrain from exercising improper editorial control. Accordingly, consistently with the mandate of the Court of Appeals, this court, meaning Bryant, concludes as a matter of law that the court factors as applied here support a conclusion that Congress intended to provide an implied right of action under Section 531E. Congratulations, Robert T. Perry. You certainly won on all four parts of your argument. Glendora also asserts a claim pursuant to 42 United States Code Section 1983 for violation of her rights under the First and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. To recover under Section 1983, a plaintiff must show the alleged violation occurred under color of state, which has consistently been treated as the same thing as the state action required under the 14th Amendment. Our court, meaning our Court of Appeals, in Jensen versus Farrell, identified two general approaches that the Supreme Court has used to determine whether seemingly private action is in fact state action. First, the state function approach examines whether the conduct of the private actor is equivalent to the performing of a state function or is traditionally associated with sovereignty. Under this approach, it is not enough if the private entity is merely affected with the public interest. It must exercise powers traditionally exclusively reserved to the state. The second approach is to examine whether the state and the private actor have a symbiotic relationship. You know, that's like plants and animals have a symbiotic relationship. Making them so significantly involved with one another as to render the private actor subject to the constitutional responsibilities of the state. A related inquiry asks whether there is a sufficiently close nexus between the state and the challenged action of the regulated entity so that the action of the latter may be fairly treated as that of the state itself. In other words, was Cablevision acting as a state? This court concludes that Cablevision is not a state actor under either approach. The ownership and operation of an entertainment facility are not powers traditionally exclusively reserved to the state, nor are they functions of sovereignty. So we lose on state action. Nor does a symbiotic relationship exist between the state and Cablevision, that Cablevision is subject to state and federal regulation or operates pursuant to a franchise, does not transform its actions, including decisions to cancel public access programs, into actions of the government. That a private entity performs a function which serves the public does not make its acts state action. Similarly, the allegation that Cablevision is a monopoly is insufficient to transform its action into state action. That was my argument. So that has been vaporized. This court, meaning Judge Bryan, agrees with the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, which held an Alliance for Community Media versus the FCC, that the public access channels are not First Amendment public forums. This court rejected the plaintiff's assertions that the channels were private property dedicated to public use and concluded that prior decisions by the United States Supreme Court cannot support a determination that cable access channels are so dedicated to the public that the First Amendment confers a right on the users to be free from any control by the owner of the cable system. Okay, I take exception to that ruling. I know that public access channels are a public forum. Why did I get 17 telephone calls Friday night when a chat with Glendora was on Channel 25 in Nassau County? Why? And why do I get something like 7 to 10 calls every time it's on TCI in 21 towns in Westchester? Public access is a public forum. Unlike the allegations in Alliance or the cases previously cited, however, Glendora also alleges in the amended complaint the cancellation of her weekly public access series was state action because it was prompted by pressure from unnamed Nassau County officials. The Supreme Court held that a private individual who conspires with government officials or who is a willful participant in joint action with the state or its agents may be sued under Section 1983. Glendora has failed to identify by name any official who influenced Cablevision's decision, but claims she will do so once discovery takes place. If joint action between state officials and Cablevision is established, state action may be present. So he's reserving until I establish that on my discovery. As our Court of Appeals held in the prior appeal, like many pro se complaints, Glendora's is verbose where verbosity is unnecessary and sparse where causal allegations are required. Well, I say that the Second Circuit is the same way. But this court must follow the well-settled rule, particularly applicable in pro se civil rights actions, that a complaint should not be dismissed unless it appears beyond doubt that the plaintiff pro se can prove no set of facts in support of her claim which would entitle her to relief. Big, big point. A court can't dismiss a pro se's claim in violation of civil rights unless it appears beyond doubt that the plaintiff can prove no set of facts in support of her claim, which would entitle her to relief. Absent evidence of the actual existence and participation of these unnamed Nassau County officials, however, that portion of the amended complaint founded on Section 1983 will have to be dismissed. This branch of the motion to dismiss may be renewed at the close of discovery. And don't you think we don't intend to renew that? Injunctive relief has already been granted to Glendora against compensatory rights unless Congress has affirmatively withdrawn the remedy. Well, the program has been cablecast without a hitch. This is a quote. Thank you, Judge Bryant. Thomas Gardner and assistant Diane Bennett in Hicksville, where the cablecasting originates, have done their job impeccably and with cheer and goodwill, efficiency and quality. End of quote. While Glendora may seek to recover compensatory damages in this action, the court finds no basis for punitive damages. That is bad. Well, compensatory, hooray! But no punitive is bad. Cablevision, Charles Dolan, John Tata et al. Should be punished for what they did, breaking a state law and breaking a federal law. So, we'll discuss that later. The motion to dismiss is denied. The defendant's motion to stay discovery is denied. It's over, Cablevision. You got to fess up. The parties shall complete their discovery in accordance with the applicable rules. A case management conference will be held before this court, that's Judge Bryan, on October 20th, 1995 at 11 a.m. So ordered, White Plains, New York, July, can't get it close enough for you to read, July 19th, 1995, Charles L. Bryant, Judge, United States District Court, Southern District of New York. I wish he had signed it. He signed something else for me. I can show you your... And so we have to run. You take care. To be continued. Welcome everybody to a chat with Glendora, and here are your jokes. The law clerks in the Westchester County Courthouse suffer from moon syndrome. Moon syndrome. They carry 1/6 of the weight they think they do. Peter says that his boss is temperamental. 50% temper and 50% mental. And Billy says, I love the way the boss conducts the meetings. He makes his proposals and then he says, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, say bye. We, on the last program, read you the decision of Judge Bryant, where Glendora beat Cablevision. And I'm putting it up to the screen so that you can kiss the decision. And this is the third time that Glendora has beaten Cablevision. A pro se has beaten a Park Avenue law firm 3 times. But on this one, of course, Robert T. Perry and Brian D. Grafman have 15 years in public access litigation. This decision was reduced to this size, and it was mailed, I think, to something like 60 people. I'll show you the mailing list if I can find it. Boy, I know it was expensive. Channel 5 News, John D. Furyk, Fordham University Law School. Channel 9 News, Channel 11 News, Gary Sherlock, Westchester Law Journal, Alexander Quin, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Center for Judicial Accountability, Gene Krasinski, Ray Hernandez of the New York Times. He's a do-nothing here in White Plains. Channel 1, Time Warner, Bill Bastone, Julie Lobia at the Village Voice, Janine Rose at Channel 12 News in Yonkers. She does a great job. Kevin McCabe, Thomas Weidlich of the National Law Journal, William Finneran, the New York Cable TV Commission, 30 Edgemont Road, White Plains, New York, Judge Van Grafelen, Judge Minor, Arnold Edmond at the Appellate Division, Donald Silverman, Judge McLaughlin at the U.S. Court of Appeals, Clerks Monica, Frank Perez, and Richard. We had good times. Nancy Crosby, Elizabeth Hubbard, Sandra Miller, James Mangano, Robert Perry, Brian Grafman, the assignment desk of News 12 in Woodbury. They won't do anything about it. Sylvia Adcock of Newsday, Anthony Riddle of Community Media Review, that's the Alliance for Community Media, Matt Goldstein of the New York Law Journal, John Rather of the New York Times, I gotta find his address, and Joseph Estrella, I gotta find his address, and Gerald Gattell Headed this morning, Everett Parker, United Church of Christ, Communications. And with that, here is the release that went with it, the news release. For immediate release, cable TV breaks the law and has to pay. Cablevision Systems Corporation broke a federal law and a state law. No cable operator shall exercise editorial control over public use of channel. Glendora was reporting on her program, A Chat with Glendora, the consumer fraud going on in Nassau County and the failure of government agencies, federal, state, and county to stop it. And Cablevision apparently was pressured into taking Glendora's program off the TV and did, thus breaking both state Executive Law Article 28, Section 829.3, and Federal Law Title 47, the United States Code 531E. This action has been going on in 6 courts since November the 12th, 1993, July 19th, 1995. Judge Charles L. Bryant, United States District Court, Southern District of New York, White Plains Branch, ruled A, defendants, Cablevision System Corporation, Charles Dolan, John Tata, William Ben, William Bell et al. Violated 531E law, that Glendora had a private right of action to enforce this law, that Glendora had a right to be on public access in Nassau, even though she is a resident of Nassau, Westchester County, that Cablevision's motion to dismiss Glendora's complaint is denied, that Cablevision's motion to stay discovery, that is to lie and cover up, is denied, that it does not matter that Glendora lives in Westchester, she can still have her program on TV in Nassau and Suffolk counties, that a civil rights action by a pro se cannot be dismissed unless it appears beyond doubt that the plaintiff can prove no set of facts in support of her claim which would entitle her to relief, meaning that Judge Bryant will give Glendora an opportunity through her depositions, interrogatories, on-site inspection, and demands for documents to prove that Cablevision took her program off TV because of pressure by county, state, and federal politicals, thus violating Glendora's civil rights of freedom of press and of speech. That's hardcore political speech. On July 28, 1994, Glendora won her injunctive relief against Cablevision in the Westchester Supreme Court. Justice Donald N. Silverman ruled plaintiff has a statutory right to have her program on television, and it must be returned to television, and it was on September 2, 1994. The first time Judge Bryan heard Glendora's case, he dismissed it. Glendora appealed his order to the United States Court of Appeals, Second Circuit, Foley Square. Judges Minor, Van Gryphelen, and McLaughlin vacated Judge Bryan's order and remanded. Glendora was assisted by Brian Amici Curii, Robert Perry, and Brian Grafman, specialists in public access legislation for 15 years. Perry is a professor of law at New York University, and Brian B. Grafman is a partner in Cairo and Grafman. This is the third time pro se Glendora has beaten Park Avenue lawyer Robert M. Kalagi of Sadley, Stevens, Burke, and Burke. Glendora is jubilant and will continue her detailed examinations of Cablevision defendants until every ounce of truth surfaces. A case management conference will be held on October 20th, 1995 at 11 a.m. at the new $33 million federal courthouse at Coahuila Street and Lexington Avenue, White Plains. Glendora also won on compensatory damages. Remember, Coahuila means, it's an Indian name for White Plains. White Plains is a swamp surrounded by 7 hills, and that's why George Washington was able to turn back General Howe in 1776 or 7, Halloween in November. General Howe went over to Dobbs Ferry and down to New York, and George Washington crossed the Hudson at that point and then went south to the famous crossing of the Delaware. Okay. Well, I didn't tell you why he was able to win. Well, he was able to win because he could put himself up on top of those hills and General Howe couldn't get at him. And plus, you know, the swamp thing. Now, this is interesting. Let me show you that again. You know, that's Judge Bryant's signature. Is that upside down? Yeah. This was my motion to compel discovery, because as I had told you, and as you well know, Cablevision for 1 year and 7 months have been fugitives of discovery. Naturally, they don't want the truth known, because they're done wrong. And they don't want you to know, but you're going to find out, because I have discovery. And so, this motion to compel discovery, and Judge Bryant writes on that, this motion is denied as moot in light of this court's decision dated July 19th, which denied defendants' motion to stay discovery. So ordered, Charles L. Bryant, United States District Judge, July the 20th, 1995. So he did this the day after he signed the great and wonderful decision. That leaves a few things to talk about. As the conference was scheduled, as you know, that was last week's bulletin, on July the 28th, it's Friday, that's the day after tomorrow. But now, I called up yesterday, and Tony Bravado told me that that conference, there's no need for that conference because I won my motion to compel discovery. And I still take exception to their calling Kalaji's weak and anemic letter a motion. It was not a motion. It was just a letter saying that they objected to, they wanted to stay the discovery. That's not a motion. But maybe we got it at a discount rate, we shareholders. We didn't have to pay Kalaji the full amount for that, the full lawyer rip-off amount for that. Well, anyway, July the 28th. I want to know about costs. Judge Bryant did not rule on costs. And I do want to take exception that cable television, public access, is not a public forum. It is. And also there's the matter of voluntary discovery. Long by now, Cablevision should have told me the name of their insurance carrier, the names and addresses of all people who will have information, tell me about documents, and there's one other thing he's supposed to tell people about. And Judge Bryant's decision does not deal with my state claims. Intentional infliction of emotional disturbance and also negligence. So there's some ravelings that we will have to tie up. There's one other thing that went out. No, it wasn't going out. I was going to say it at the July 28th conference, which has been declared, which has really been made moot. See, I don't have to use this anymore because I got the ruling in my favor, but before I got the ruling in my favor, it was like this. Honorable Charles L. Bryant, Jr., pursuant to Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 37, Plaintiff Appellant, Plaintiff again, Glendora, c'est moi, submits this motion for an order compelling disclosure. That's Part A of Rule 37. 1, this is the appropriate court. 2, the motion, Cablevision, Dolan, Tata, Bell, Quin et al. Failed to make a disclosure required by Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 26A. Failure to disclose and failure to cooperate. A, therefore, Glendora moves to compel and moves for appropriate sanctions of $10,000. Movement has conferred in good faith with the defendants. Defendants have done nothing. B, defendants failed to answer questions propounded and submitted under Rules 30 and 31. The corporation has failed to make a designation under Rule 30B and 31A. And defendants have failed under Rule 34 to respond that inspection will be permitted as requested, and defendants failed to respond when inspection was requested. Therefore, plaintiff appellant, plaintiff again Glendora, c'est moi, moves for an order compelling an answer and a designation and an order compelling inspection in accordance with her request, a request that was made way back in May 1995. In this affidavit, Glendora certifies that she sent her 5 discovery demands, one each day consecutively, May 30th, May 31st, June 1st, June 2nd, and June 3rd. Franklin served them and provided copies to you, Judge Bryant, Grafman, Robert Perry, and Robert Kalaji. See, this is an oral argument. Glendora attempted to confer with these Cablevision defendants in an effort to secure the information without court action. Sanctions. Defendants should pay, pursuant to Rule 37A, 4A, the reasonable expenses incurred incurred in making this motion, 2 hours of time and labor at $250 per hour. By Rule 37B42, if Glendora succeeds in her motion to compel discovery, she pleads that Cablevision, Dolan, Quin, et al. Be ordered in contempt of court and be sanctioned $10,000. Glendora's rights were violated enough in the original law breaking of November the 12th, 1993, 1 year, 9 months ago, for which we said Glendora has received no justice yet. Now her rights to discovery are being violated. This was written before Judge Bryant's decision came. Copies to Perry and Grafman, dated White Plains, New York, July 19, 1995. Yours in truth, Glendora. Chat with Glendora. We are up to mailing number 170. 171, and we are up to page 9,313 of the bad record of Charles Dolan, John Tata, Lusgarten, Randolph, Quin, Bell, etc. You think those people would just face it and say, we did wrong, we're sorry, let's make amends, let's get this over with. Harry is a great CEO, Chief Executive Officer. In just 5 years, he has taken our company from obscurity to anonymity. And Alice said, did the boss give you a piece of his mind? And Dick says, yes, he did. And that's amazing when you consider how low the inventory is. And John was doing publicity for the bowling alley, and he wrote an ad. And it said, parents, get your child interested in bowling. Get him off the streets and into the alleys. And now we are up to Glendora versus the Gannett Company, Incorporated, and John Curley, and Douglas McGorkindale, and Gary Watson, and Gary Sherlock, and Kenneth Paulson. This is the company that cannot keep its word, that has baby reporters, and the company that can't write a fair and true report on a judicial proceeding, and the company that commits libel. There is no news on that, except as far as the chat with Glendora goes, there's no news. But Gannett put down $1.7 billion to buy multimedia. That's the Donahue Show and those other rather dirty shows that I don't like, freaky shows. I interviewed the president of multimedia at his office in South Carolina over the telephone once. I think you remember that probably. So they put it down, and that puts Gannett into the cable business because multimedia owns cable companies. Moving on, Gordon Burroughs was one of the judges that went by on the judge's entrance when I was out rallying. But he wasn't dressed up. He went by in a car, and he said, good morning, and he was wearing a plaid play shirt. I don't think he was there in the court, and his courtroom is always locked up unless somebody else goes and uses it. About Judge Coppola, I watched Judge Coppola's court on Monday, July the 24th. And he was intently listening to a claim by a man who was hit by a, well, these trucks would come up and there would be a hose, and it would, and then you fill the gas tank with a hose. And these were some kind of very big trucks. And this guy drove off apparently with the hose in the tank, and the hose came back and hit the man. That's terrible. So that was being heard, and of course that would be an insurance company case. The story on Judge Coppola briefly is that he made a very bad decision on Glendora versus the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal. It was an unjust decision, and he let them go over 2 months and broke the law to settle the order. He never should have let them break the law in the first place. He shouldn't have let them break the law in the second place. And then I brought a second suit against ADHCR, a different one down in Manhattan, and Judge Coppola's decision on that ignored controlling law, ignored the facts. And what is next? And we're waiting to hear from the New York State Court of Appeals on Coppola. The appellate division got them all mixed up. There was Coppola Bad Decision 1 and Coppola Bad Decision 2, and the New York State Appellate Division, Second Department, dealt with Coppola 2 first and Coppola 1 second, got them all mixed up. So I think Coppola 2 is dead, just like Justice is dead, and Coppola 1, we're waiting to hear from the New York State Court of Appeals whether they'll grant my motion for leave to appeal it. Fat chance of that. So that brings us up to the Fund for Modern Courts, which I call the Fund for Ancient Courts, and to Elizabeth Hubbard, Michelle Mayapath, and Alan Beck, and hooray, Elizabeth Hubbard is out. That's 1 down, 2 to go. Announcement that I showed you last week that Elizabeth Hubbard has left the Fund for Modern Courts. That is a great victory. That's better than a court victory. Elizabeth B. Hubbard has resigned as the Executive Director for the Fund for Modern and Committee for Modern Courts, a post she had held for the past 3.5 years. And so I sent this to Judge Colabella, and I said at the Westchester Supreme Court that this shows you Glendora was right. Hooray. And I also sent to, no, I haven't sent this to Judge Colabella, but this is something to tell you about. Nicholas Colabella, here's what a more enlightened and knowledgeable judge has to say about frivolity. The case is Cablevision versus Cablevision, May the 20th, 1985, Supreme Court of New York, Appellate Division, 2nd Department, 108 AD, 2nd, 445, 429, New York Supplement, 2nd, 914. Judge is J.P. Laser. He must be fast. On July 17, 1995, Monday, 11:10 a.m., when Glendora and Ronald were observing your court, room 1602, you abruptly got up and left the bench in the courtroom without notifying anybody, without giving any reason why, and without saying when you would be back. All of this is in violation of Canon 3A, 22 New York Rules and Regulations, Code on Judicial Conduct. Yours in truth, Glendora. Why did he do that? Why do you think he did that? In retrospect, the only thing I can see is that he was so angry to have me there in his courtroom, and he can't keep me from coming into his court, that he just thought the best way to get rid of me was to stop, get up, walk out of the courtroom. And he never gave anybody any notice that he was going to do this. He never told anybody why he was leaving the bench, and he never told anybody when he would return to the bench. And people, litigants, are entitled to all those things, and that was a violation of rights. Here is what Judge Laser says. Also troubling is the fact that frivolity, like beauty, is often in the eyes of the beholder. An action or motion which may appear frivolous for one judge may, in fact, be the beginning of a new development in the law. Many causes of action and procedures which are commonplace today would at one time have been deemed frivolous. For example, prior to the swift demise of the citadel of privity and the dramatic growth of a cause of action in strict product liability, and he mentioned some other ones here. Another such example is a cause of action for negligent infliction of emotional harm. His point is that these would have been treated as frivolous, but now, today, they are serious causes of action and taken very seriously. Yet it is as a result of the constant influx of novel claims, innovative procedures, and fresh ideas that our common law grows and flourishes. Without them, it must inevitably stultify and decay. Hear that, Nicholas Colabella. And even without that, the action was not frivolous. When Elizabeth Hubbard, Alan Beck, and Michelle Mayapath in the Fund for Ancient Courts go out and go back on their word to you and make you do 100 hours work and spend $100 for nothing, I think it's time that the courts took notice, and I think it's time that the courts dispensed justice, not favoritism and bias. Find the United States Supreme Court reports, and Franklin was looking around them, and he found the index here, and look, he found 3 Glendoras, United States Supreme Court. Glendora versus Dolan, Glendora versus Duperstein, Glendora versus Gannett. And here's what they say. Glendora Petitioner versus Gannett Company Incorporated et al. April the 3rd, 1995. Petition for writ of certiorari to the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit denied. It was the same case as below, 40 F. 3rd, 1238. Let's see what else Franklin found. Glendora Petitioner, up there in the upper right, versus Conrad Duberstein. March the 27th, 1995, petition for writ of certiorari to the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. Denied. I'm looking for Glendora versus Dolan. Glendora versus Duberstein. Glendora versus Gannett. And now, he must be here. Glendora Petitioner versus Charles Dolan. Article that was in the New York Times business page Monday, July 24th. This is a pretty good picture of Charles Dolan. His hair is a lot lighter than when I interviewed him in 1988. But then we lost him. And I really can't see as anything new is being said here. It must have been a strategy to get this article out the same day or week that Cablevision lost the case to Glendora in the United States District Court, Judge Bryant. But he's not saying anything new here. Cablevision is pushing hometown news and regional sports to keep people as subscribers so they won't go off to the telephone companies and they won't go off to the satellites. He's doing it locally with News 12 Hicksville Community Bulletin Board, alphanumeric, local weather. Regionally, he's doing it with News 12 Long Island, Madison Square Garden Network, and Sports Channel. I see nothing new there. And nationally, he's doing it with the Cable News Network, ESPN, and ESPN. quake to be up against Professor Perry. There are a few things that you should know about Charles Dolan. Watch a Chat with Glendora Thursdays at 8:30 a.m., Channel 14. Take that back, it's Channel 16. It's Channel 14 in White Plains. He's a lawbreaker. Title 47 of the United States Code, Section 531E, and New York Executive Law, Article 28, Section 829C. And instead of amending, he lies and covers up for 1 year, 7 months, and pays no dividends, paying instead Park Avenue lawyers to lie for him. The enclosed tells it all. Well, he just lost July 19, 1995. Decision order is enclosed. This is the third time he has lost. Yours in truth, Glendora. Oh, and lest we forget, instead of presiding at the annual meeting, which Glendora attended as a shareholder, Charles Dolan and son Patrick fled to Alaska. More hanky-panky. I say that Judge Donald N. Silverman is on a destructive, self-destructive course. Judge Joseph Trafficante, there is something decidedly wrong with Judge Donald N. Silverman, Westchester Supreme Court. On July 24, 1995, Monday at 11:10 a.m., Glendora entered his courtroom to watch. Silverman said, "Instantly!" Closed proceeding. Glendora did not even have an opportunity to move away from the door and sit down. Glendora said nothing and noted who was in the courtroom on the left side. In 10 seconds, Silverman says, "If you don't leave here in 15 seconds, I'll cite you for contempt." He nodded to the New York State Court officer who came and stood in front of Glendora belly to belly. Glendora said nothing but stepped to the right of the court officer to see who else was present on the right side of the courtroom. The court officer stepped to the right and blocked Glendora's view. Glendora said nothing and went out the door. There was nothing on the calendar posted outside. I made a copy of it, folks, what was posted on the calendar on the wall. I had to write that, of course, with standing up and not with any support behind it. There was nothing on the calendar posted outside the door on the bulletin board that even smacked of closed proceedings. The list of cases, as Glendora jotted them down, is included. Glendora thinks Silverman was lying and abusing his position as a judge. Silverman is violating the 6th Amendment of the Constitution, public trial. Courtrooms are open to the public. You should call Silverman in and set him straight. This is the second time he has violated his oath of office. The first is described in the enclosed quo warranto. Donald Silverman is on a course of self-destruction. Yours in truth, Glendora, to Judge Kaye, Judge Malonis, Commission on Judicial Conduct, Center for Judicial Accountability, and it also went to Ingracia. And this is quotes from the Code for Judicial Conduct. And a judge is supposed to avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety. A judge shall respect and comply with the law and shall conduct himself or herself at all times in a manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity and impartiality of the judiciary. What does that do to you, what you just heard? Does that promote your confidence in the judiciary, in the integrity, and in the impartiality? Silverman fails. No judge shall lend the prestige of his or her office to advance the private interests of others. Silverman flunks adjudicative responsibilities. A judge shall be faithful to the law and maintain professional competence in it. What do you think? A judge shall be patient, dignified, and courteous to litigants. Not Silverman, never. Silverman wields contempt like a madman. That's his tool. So we have some jokes for you folks. The big advantage of a bowling ball over a golf ball, or the big advantage of bowling over golf, is that you don't lose the ball. And the mind is a wonderful thing, Peter said, and his wife said, yes, everybody should have one. And who was the last man to box Joe Louis? Who was the last man to box Joe Louis? The Undertaker. We have here for you this week's report from the 22nd of July to the 27th of July 1995 on the wall breaking of Walsh, Alpucci, Larkin, Bendage, Wilson, Babe, Conboy, Koza, Cousins, McGrath, Odell, Karamitzos, Judge Wood, Garlucci, Judge Ingracia, Farnham, Westchester Supreme Court, Appellate Division, 2nd Department, and the New York Court of Appeals in Porzio. Dorothy, Herbert, you've been up to that buffet table 7 times. Aren't you embarrassed? And Herbert says, oh no dear, I keep telling them it's for you. So what happened on Michael Koza does it again? Did you hear that? Yes, I think you heard that last week. And you know about the place across the street, the condominium is $179,000. And it's really big, but as I think about it, I wouldn't want to live there because there are only windows on one side, and that's the west side. That means you wouldn't get the east sun, you wouldn't get the south sun. No, you can't. You got to have windows all the way around the way you do here. Nella Alpucci blasted her Pontiac horn twice under Glendora's bedroom window Saturday. That's grounds for eviction. She shouldn't even drive her car in here. She has no parking space in here. Only 5 vehicles should ever come in here past our bedroom window so close to the building walls. That would be 1B, 2B, 3B, 4B, and 4D. Nella does not belong there. She's a lawbreaker, times 3 laws. And the stats on the wall law breaking is somewhere here. 10 1/4 hours the week of July the 17th, $11.50. The number of tortious acts is 2,753. Michael Koza is still a deadbeat. He hasn't paid the $30 for the depositions that he took on August 22nd and October 25th, 1994. And we are up to 173 logs, 173 mailings, and the number of pages of bad record is 3,200. And this log went out in reduced form on Monday to 15 people, including the DHCR. Judge Wood, you know, he knew he's doing a crooked thing. You know, how can a judge be crooked? Well, a judge is crooked. The $200 costs that he charged me, that's not right. There's 7 defendants, and Michael Koza is only dealing with 2 of the defendants, the police officer of Harrison, Andrew Larkin, and his son Kevin Larkin. So you take $200 and you divide it by 7 defendants, and then you multiply it by 2, and that's $57. But Koza knows he's lying, Koza knows he's cheating, and Judge Wood knows he's lying, and Judge Wood knows he's cheating. How can a judge do that? And why does Judge Wood do it? Why does Judge Wood do it? Because he wants that political judicial hearing officer appointment, and Wilson Bave Law Firm has the money and has the strings to pull it, and is saying as much to Wood, you don't sign that judgment the way I gave it to you, $200 instead of the correct amount, $57, then you don't get your judicial hearing officer appointment. Isn't that nice? Public courts, isn't that nice? Yeah. That's why we go out and get the petitions. And I have got 120, see the little petition reduced there. Can you see all those names? I've got 121 signatures, Franklin and I have. And it's to George Pataki. We the people hereby petition Governor George Pataki to appoint a state commission to investigate and hold public hearings on judicial corruption, such as I just told you, and the political manipulation of judgeships in the state of New York. And when I was out rallying the 24th, Monday, Judge Wood went by in his car, because I stand right at the judge's entrance to the county courthouse. He said, "Good morning." Next time he goes by, I'm going to say, "No good Wood." The law, let's see, the mailing list for the new wall lawsuits, the new group of wall lawsuits, that mailing list is ready, and it's about 25 people in it. And it is all typed and it's all written. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I haven't had an opportunity to work on it because of the law breaking of others and for witnessing for others. I deal in a civilized way with the Manhattan Civil Court, the New York Civil Court. the appeals clerk says she still has not got my minutes, yet I've got a green card that they were received. So she left it that she would go to the mailroom and see. And this is about the unethical conduct of one Michael Gelman, who is the producer of Live with Regis. Glendora sent him 2 videotapes, and he did not return them. He doesn't believe in returning people's property. He didn't have the upbringing for it. He didn't have the religious education for it. He didn't have the societal education for it or the school education for it. You don't steal somebody else's property. You return a person's property. So we're waiting for the appeals clerk to get my corrections of the minutes and for the notice of settling the transcript and get this thing settled so it can be sent across the street to the appellate term so that I can sit down and write my brief about the unethical behavior of one Michael Gelman. Folks, it's announcement time on A Chat with Glendora, and that's why public access is a public forum. We have the Americans for Legal Reform. We'll put up their number on the screen, 516-777-7307. Now, they have their meetings the last Tuesday of the month, and then the day after that, they have their rallying. They go to the Nassau County Supreme Court and the Suffolk County Supreme Court, and they rally against bad lawyers. That's Americans for Legal Reform, Carl Lancicera and Harvey Cash. In Nassau County, Andrew somebody of something Lane, Levittown, Glendora Happy Book he wanted, and the first 4 letters are 1904 of the zip, first 4 numbers, and he said, God bless you, and this was on Friday, July the 21st. He called up, but it was totally indistinguishable on the answering machine. We listened to it 4 times. Another such case is Maureen or Loria Dupuy, Charles Street, Belrose, we think. I love your show and I want to read more about you. Send us a Glendora Happy Book, 22 Charles Street. But the rest of it was undistinguishable on the telephone answering machine. So if you know those people, please tell them to call me up so we can send them Happy Books. We need their addresses and telephone numbers. And here's a bad judge, Fred Shapiro, jailed a mother in a child support case. A mother was supposed to pay child support to her ex-husband. And Fred Shapiro is going to put her in jail because she can't come up with the $17,000. Cable box converter change. I'm not going to buy any new channels for TCI, so I don't need to fill this out or call up. Mayor Cy Shulman of the City of White Plains. Can you do something about filling up Channel 14 primetime, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m., Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights? It is a shameful waste of cable TV resources to have that public access channel repeat every 5 minutes on alphanumeric. You got this channel time and space from TCI, why waste it? Many White Plains public access producers want prime time. I chat with Glendora in languages at 5:30 p.m. Thursdays and receives very few telephone calls. On the other hand, from TCI, Channel 8 at 9 p.m. Tuesdays, it receives an average of 10 calls. And last Friday at 10 p.m. on Nassau at Cablevision, it received 17 calls. Opening up Channel 14 to primetime cablecasting of public access producers' program is long overdue. Please help. Enclosed is the case Glendora just won, making law for every cable access producer in the United States and for every cable operator in the nation. Here's today's joke. Charlie brought home his report card with all A's on it. His father says he must get his brains from me. His mother says he must. I still have mine. Police Commissioner Dolce. On July 24, 1995, Monday at 1:30 p.m., there was a black girl of about 8 years old leaning against the outside wall of the Bank of New York near the back door. She had on a leash a dog of some 40 pounds. It was 93 degrees and the humidity was 93%. The dog was panting heavily. His health and life were endangered by the heat and humidity, as was the girl's. The sun was relentless. We had been in the bank and noticed a tall, thin black man with another little girl, even younger, who looked like the sister of the girl outside. Glendora asked the girl to bring herself and the dog to safety in the shade. The girl argued vocally and refused. She was asked 3 times and told she was breaking a law, cruelty to animals. Glendora went back into the bank and asked the 9 people in line if anyone had left a dog and a little girl outside in the killer's sun. The tall black man mentioned above said he had. Glendora asked him to move the girl and the dog into the shade because they are in a bad way. The man was abusive, vituperative, and irrelevant. Franklin, my husband, had stayed outside to keep watch of the dog and the girl. A white youth about 18 years old in a Jeep verbally abused and insulted Franklin. He told Franklin he was going to call the police because Franklin was looking intently at him. Harassment, the youth called it. At Office Max, the first phone that she could reach, Glendora called the White Plains Police. Officer Stetz or something, anyway, whoever it was, answering 911 shortly after 1:30 p.m. on July 24th, Monday, picked up. Glendora, outside the Bank of New York on Westchester Avenue, there's a little girl and a dog standing in the sun, 93 degrees and high humidity. The dog is in a bad way and it is cruelty to animals. The father of the girl is in the bank. White Plains officer, well, ma'am, it's his dog. Glendora, he's breaking a law, cruelty to animals. Desk officer, it's his dog. Glendora, it's your job to enforce the law. Stupid. Desk officer hung up. Commissioner Dolce, for this and hundreds of other such encounters, people have lost their respect for the White Plains Police, and you, of course, will do nothing about this complaint. Yours in truth, Glendora. Folks, this is about cameras in the courtroom. Given the size of the state, and it comes from Burton Roberts' report to the New York legislature and to former Governor Cuomo, that we must have cameras in the courtroom, and it must be there permanently. And so I copied out a few pages for you. Given the size of the state and the hundreds of applications for audio-visual coverage made during the current experiment, the committee is favorably impressed with the paucity of violations of Section 218 that were reported to it. By contrast, 68 violations were alleged during the second experiment. Although Chief Administrator audio-visual coverage of court proceedings serves an important educational function, and I hope you hear this, Judge Ingracia. You don't want cameras because you don't want to see people, you don't want people to see how bad you are. Public scrutiny of the judicial system. That's what we need. Public scrutiny of the judicial system. The program has had minimal, if any, adverse effects, particularly during the same as all the prior studies, that cameras in the courts have minimal, if any, adverse effect on participants in court proceedings. The committee believes that as cameras eventually are accepted as an unobjectionable part of the courtroom proceedings, certain of the current statutory restrictions and safeguards relating to their usage will become superfluous. Nevertheless, because of the need to focus on the paramount goal of permanently enacting the statute, the committee does not now recommend that any of the current restrictions and safeguards be amended or repealed. The committee is highly critical of judges, like you, Judge Ingracia, who have decided applications for audio-visual coverage solely on their own predetermined attitudes. Some judges have told media representatives that they will never allow cameras into their courtrooms. The committee urges these judges to reevaluate their positions, I'll say, and recommends that administrators like you, Judge Ingracia, be more aggressive in exercising their authority to reverse a trial judge's determination that is not based on a reasonable exercise of discretion. I don't see any discretion coming from these judges I mentioned to you yet. Judges should be mindful that the statutory requirement that the parties consent before coverage of arraignments and suppression hearings is allowed applies only to arraignments and suppression hearings. The media should make greater efforts to adhere more scrupulously to the statute's 7-day application rule. Are they Seventh-day Adventists? And judges, I almost am because I like the way they eat. They don't eat animal products. And judges, and they don't smoke and they don't drink, and judges upon receiving applications for coverage should notify the parties so they will have time to prepare their arguments and be heard on the application. As recommended by several media representatives who testified at the public hearings, a list of acceptable audio-visual equipment models authorized by the Chief Administrator of the courts should be updated to reflect recent technological advances in such equipment, meaning getting smaller. The committee commends those news media organizations that, in conjunction with their coverage of court proceedings, have made, quote, concerted efforts to include discussions and presentations on relevant principles of law and judicial processes. Audio-visual coverage of court proceedings serves an important educational function and promotes public scrutiny of the judicial system. We need that, and sister. Here's an interesting story about a law clerk who is discharged for political reasons. It is written by Kevin Flynn, Bronx Democrats, striving to flex some old-fashioned political muscle, told a state Supreme Court judge either to dump his law clerk or forget about getting the party's nomination in the election this fall, according to court personnel. And guess what? The clerk got dumped. His mortal sin? His wife works for a Republican by the name of Rudolph Giuliani. Larkin and his wife, both registered Democrats, declined to discuss the dismissal. There was a meeting in his office, and Thompson said he would rather lose the judgeship and go back to private practice than lose his law clerk, Howard Larkin. But the next thing Howard Larkin knew, he was told to leave. And these law clerks make $73,000 a year. I would like to see that happen more often and tell us the terrible things that go on in judges' chambers. I would like to see that. Here's a screwball. The reason we had so many bad judges is that the commission the Commission on Judicial Conduct is not doing its job. So here's another one of their form letters. I believe this is number 26 for me. The commission, Glendora says, is a lousy disposition. Glendora has sent this useless commission 30 complaints, and all you have done is send out your moronic form letters. So we will go back on the streets, down with the Commission on Judicial Conduct, down with Gerald Stern, down with Albert Lawrence, down with Lee Clear. Then we will walk with our clipboard to get signatures to Pataki to appoint a commission to hold public hearings and to stop the manipulation of judgeships in New York State along with your political appointment. And you have addressed me by the wrong name. Can't you read a caption and a signature correctly? This is a letter written by the Center for Judicial Accountability to fearless writers needed to expose a judicial Watergate. Where do you go when judges break the law? You go public. And this was sent to all of the job-hunting writers with political and or legal background seeking truly meaningful work. Stories of national importance, and that, of course, had to do with the folding up of Newsday, New York. New York takes offense of not only a landmark year for the Center for Judicial Accountability, CJA 1994 was the year in which the Center took the offensive against judicial incompetence and corruption. Judicial election rigging, the illegal suspension of an attorney who blew the whistle on it, judges who heard a lawsuit against themselves, and the state's highest court's attempts to cover up the ensuing mess finally saw the light of day in an advertisement on the op-ed page of the New York Times. The ad drew attention from across the nation. Hundreds of victims of judicial corruption responded, testifying to the depth of the struggle to bring the justice system to accountability. News media, which had remained silent on the issue for 5 years, suddenly took an interest as well. Doris Sassower, the Center's director and co-founder, found herself addressing tens of thousands of listeners in interviews on WABC and WBAI radio in New York and WWDB radio in Philadelphia, as well as readers of the New York Daily News and the New York Observer. The center was asked to provide background information for an Inside Editions special segment on lazy judges. Remember that? I showed you some of that. It was on Inside Edition. Chief judges showing up for work at 11 o'clock. And I see it too. You know, when I stand in rally at the judges' entrance at the Westchester County Courthouse, Silverman comes in at 9:12. He drives in. He's supposed to be on the bench at 9 or at 9:30. The center was asked to provide background information for an Inside Edition special segment on lazy judges and is working with a variety of magazines and television programs developing coverage of judicial corruption. Success was not limited to informing the public about the issues. In mid-December, the United States Department of Justice notified the New York State court system that there were serious problems with the way some state Supreme Court justices are selected. One questionable selection method is called cross-endorsement. That's Con Edison. Con you out of your money every month, in which judicial candidates are nominated and elected by party leaders in one action. In April, the investigation was faltering when Sassower furnished the Justice Department with a carton of materials from a cross-endorsement lawsuit brought in 1990 by her mother. As a result of the attention, cross-endorsement was a target when the crackdown on state Supreme Court judges came in December. Featured in the New York Law Journal and the New York Times, the issue is likely to result in a lengthy court battle in federal courts between the state and the Justice Department. I want to testify. The center continues to keep activists and members of the legal profession informed on the issues it tracks. It established its infrastructure in 1994, incorporating as a not-for-profit organization and recruiting its first full-time staff. Projects for 1995 include systematically reaching out to all activist groups involved in fighting judicial corruption or working for judicial reform, continuing a public awareness campaign, and tracking the media's coverage of the judiciary. Anyone whose activities or activism is directed at or through the judiciary is welcome to contact Commission for Judicial Accountability, Incorporated, at 914-421-1200. A half hours going with Maria Ganios to Mount Vernon simply to be a witness for her at a trial where Savarina Mariana had, had smashed Maria in the face. Maria wanted assault, and so we get there at 1 o'clock after going through the obnoxious New York State court officers, and I told them quite flatly, frankly, that I was entitled to have a woman court officer frisk me. And so he stood at his distance and said that he wasn't going to touch me. So he went up and down with that metal detector. Anyhow, it come to find out that at 9:30 that same morning, without ever notifying Maria, Savarina and her lawyer came to court before, what's her name, Brenda, what's her name? And she pled guilty, and Maria wasn't even present, and Maria wasn't even notified. See, they thought nobody was going to notice that. They thought that you'd never find that out. And she wasn't even notified, and Maria wanted to press for assault, and so she pled guilty to harassment, and Maria never had a chance to present to the judge her $600 medical bills for the smashing in the face. So, that's something. Now that's just one thing. I was 5.5 hours down there supporting Maria. The other thing is this, is that Maria wanted to file 2 complaints about these people stealing her property, and she went down to the Mount Vernon police downstairs underneath the courtroom. They have a beautiful courtroom and a court building. You got to give them credit for that. It's beautiful. And she had to fight to get the police to take her complaints. And they resisted all the way, and then they began to holler. One of the police officers began to holler, and then the captain named Garati began to holler, and he was angry because I was there as a witness, and I was writing everything down. And I was seeing that right before my eyes, Maria's civil rights being violated. And he went off into a rage. And then you know what he did, this Captain Garati? He called Maria into into a room, and he absolutely refused to let me come in. He absolutely refused. Maria went into the complaint room because he told her to go into the complaint room and make the complaints, and then they denied